"You're not good enough for my son." The accusation echoes through the lavish surroundings of the Sapphire Cove resort. Naomi Clark, a talented 29-year-old Latina woman, hides a huge fortune from her husband's family. Her mother-in-law, Eleanor Bennett, a snobbish real estate mogul, despises Naomi, mistaking her for a lowly bartender, together with her cruel sister-in-law, Vivian, and the cunning Rachel, who has her sights set on Naomi's loyal husband, Daniel. The trio torment her during her luxurious vacation at Naomi's own resort. But what dark plot are they hatching behind her back? And how will the truth about Naomi's empire shake their world? She'll never be a real Bennett. Daniel deserves better. These harsh words will lead to an unbelievable confrontation. Tune in to see the secrets revealed, betrayals, and ultimate revenge from Naomi Clark's love. This kind of dramatic story, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss our latest videos. Leave a comment. Where are you watching from? This battle for honor and power will leave you speechless. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting a golden sheen across the Sapphire Cove resort, its pristine beaches and towering palms a testament to luxury. Inside the penthouse office, Naomi Clark sat at her mahogany desk, her sharp eyes scanning a spreadsheet of quarterly profits. At 29, this Latina woman had built an empire from nothing. A single derelict beachfront lot transformed into Sapphire Horizon Enterprises, a chain of 12 elite resorts and 8 Michelin-starred restaurants. Her name was whispered in boardrooms, her vision celebrated in industry magazines, yet the weight of her success was a secret she carried like a hidden jewel, especially from her husband's family. Naomi's fingers paused on the keyboard as her phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor Bennett, her mother-in-law, flashed on the screen. "Pack light for the beach house, Naomi, nothing too flashy. It's just family." The words dripped with Eleanor's signature condescension, a subtle jab at Naomi's supposed simplicity. Eleanor, a petite woman with a penchant for pearl necklaces and a small real estate empire, believed Naomi was merely a bartender, a nobody who'd somehow snagged her precious son, Daniel. Naomi's lips curled into a wry smile. If only Eleanor knew she was texting the owner of the very resort she'd booked for her annual family vacation. Naomi leaned back in her leather chair, her gaze drifting to a framed photo on her desk. Her and Daniel laughing on a beach 5 years ago. She'd met him at a hospitality conference when she was 24, already a rising star, but fiercely private about her achievements. Daniel, a software engineer with a warm smile and quiet strength, was different from the pretentious crowd. He'd approached her after her keynote speech, oblivious to her status, and asked her opinion on a wine pairing as if she were just another attendee. Their connection was instant, untainted by her wealth or his family's snobbery. When they married, Naomi chose to keep her empire under wraps, wanting his family to see her for who she was, not what she owned. Daniel knew the truth, but respected her wish, though she sometimes caught the strain in his eyes. When his family's remarks cut too deep, Eleanor Bennett was the ringleader of those cuts, a self-styled matriarch. She ruled her social circle with an iron grip. Her real estate firm, a modest but visible player in the elite circles of their coastal town, to Eleanor, Naomi was an anomaly. A Latina woman who didn't fit her vision of pedigree. A bartender? Daniel, really? She'd once hissed at a family dinner, assuming Naomi was out of earshot. Naomi had overheard, her hand tightening around a glass of Merlot, but she'd said nothing, letting Eleanor's prejudice reveal itself. Vivian, Daniel's younger sister and Eleanor's loyal shadow, was no better. With her sharp tongue and designer handbags, Vivian relished every chance to belittle Naomi, her giggles echoing at comments about Naomi's little job or limited prospects. Yet Daniel was Naomi's shield. At that same dinner, when Vivian smirked and asked Naomi if she'd mixed any good cocktails lately, Daniel's voice cut through the tension. "Vivian, enough. Naomi's work is her business, and she's damn good at it." His defense warmed Naomi's heart, though it earned him a frosty glare from Eleanor. Daniel's loyalty was unwavering, even if it strained his relationship with his mother. Naomi admired his courage, knowing how Eleanor's approval loomed over him like a storm cloud. The annual Bennett family vacation was Eleanor's grand stage, a week-long spectacle at Sapphire Cove where she played the benevolent queen. She'd rent the most exclusive beach house, unaware it belonged to Naomi, and parade her wealth. Before her relatives and friends each year, Naomi watched in silent amusement as Eleanor handed over thousands of dollars to her own company, bragging about treating the family to a luxury only she could afford. Naomi never corrected her, savoring the irony like a fine wine. She'd walk the resort's halls, nodding to staff who knew her as the boss, their discreet smiles a shared secret as Eleanor barked orders at them. And sometimes at Naomi herself. This year, though, the air felt different. Naomi's assistant, Sophia, had overheard Eleanor on a call. Last week, finalizing details for the vacation, "Bring Rachel along," Eleanor had said, her voice low but sharp. "She's perfect for Daniel, classy, connected. It's time he saw what he's missing." Rachel, the daughter of Eleanor's closest friend, ran a high-end interior design firm and carried herself like royalty. Naomi's jaw clenched at the memory. Eleanor wasn't just dismissing her, she was scheming to replace her. The audacity stung, but Naomi's mind was already turning, calculating. She'd faced worse than Eleanor's petty games and come out on top. Naomi rose from her desk, her reflection catching in the office's floor-to-ceiling windows. Her tailored blazer and simple gold earrings belied the power she wielded, a deliberate choice to blend in rather than stand out. She'd built Sapphire Horizon from a crumbling lot. She'd bought it at 22, pouring every ounce of her grit into it. Sleepless nights, hostile investors, and skeptics who doubted a young Latina woman could dominate the luxury market. She'd silenced them all. Her resorts were booked years in advance, her restaurants a pilgrimage for food critics. Yet to Eleanor and Vivian, she was invisible, a footnote in their gilded world. She glanced at the text again. Eleanor's words a spark igniting something fierce within her. Naomi had let the Bennetts underestimate her for years, partly to test their character, partly to protect her peace. But as she packed her suitcase for the vacation, slipping in a simple sundress Eleanor would surely deem cheap. She felt a shift. The beach house, her beach house, would be more than a backdrop. This time it was her domain, her creation, and she'd be damned if she let Eleanor's cruelty go unchecked forever. Daniel called as she zipped her bag. "You ready for Mom's circus?" he teased, his voice a balm to her nerves. Naomi chuckled, "Always, just don't let her make me carry her luggage again." Daniel laughed, then softened. "I've got your back, Naomi, always." His words steadied her, a reminder of the man who saw her, truly saw her, even if his family refused to. She hung up, her eyes lingering on the resort's logo, etched into her office door, a sleek sapphire wave. Eleanor, Vivian, and their new pawn Rachel were stepping into her world. They didn't know it yet, but Naomi Clark was no one's servant, and she was ready to play her hand. The Sapphire Cove resort shimmered under the midday sun, its turquoise waves lapping against ivory sands and glass-walled villas that gleamed like jewels. Naomi Clark stepped onto the private beach house's veranda, her simple sundress fluttering in the breeze. A deliberate choice to blend in, though her sharp eyes missed nothing at 29. She was the invisible architect of this paradise, the owner of Sapphire Horizon Enterprises. Yet to her husband's family, she was just Naomi, the bartender who'd married up. The irony was a quiet fire in her chest as she watched the Bennett family arrive in a convoy of polished luxury cars, their tires crunching on the gravel drive. Eleanor Bennett led the charge, stepping out of her sleek black Mercedes SUV with the air of a queen surveying her kingdom, her pearl earrings glinting as she adjusted her wide-brimmed hat, her gaze sweeping over the beach house she'd rented, at a price that made Naomi's accountant smile. "Naomi, dear," Eleanor called, her voice syrupy with false warmth. "Be a love and help with the luggage, won't you? You're used to hustling, I'm sure." The jab landed like a practiced dart, and Naomi felt the familiar sting of being reduced to a servant in her own domain. Before she could respond, Daniel, her husband, was at her side, his jaw tight. "Mom, we've got staff for that," he said, his tone firm but measured. He placed a protective hand on Naomi's shoulder, his brown eyes flashing with quiet defiance. Eleanor's smile faltered, but she waved a manicured hand. "Of course, darling. I just thought Naomi wouldn't mind, given her line of work." Daniel's grip on Naomi tightened, and she squeezed his hand in return. A silent thank you. His loyalty was her anchor, a steady force against the storm of his family's disdain. Vivian, Daniel's younger sister, sauntered up next, her designer sunglasses perched atop her head like a crown. "Naomi, you're looking comfortable," she said, her eyes raking over Naomi's sundress with a smirk. Did you borrow that from the staff closet? Her giggle was sharp, a blade wrapped in silk. Naomi's lips curved into a polite smile, her years of navigating hostile boardrooms keeping her composure ironclad. It's just a dress, Vivian, she replied, her voice calm but edged with steel. Daniel shot his sister a warning look. Knock it off, Viv. Let's just enjoy the week. Then came Rachel, the wild card Eleanor had brought to tilt the game. Rachel, the daughter of Eleanor's closest friend and heiress to a high-end interior design firm, stepped out of a convertible, her blonde hair cascading over a silk caftan that screamed wealth. Eleanor had introduced her as a dear family friend, but Naomi saw the truth in the way Rachel's eyes lingered on Daniel, predatory and calculated. Daniel, it's been ages, Rachel purred, gliding toward him with a hug that lasted a beat too long. Daniel stepped back, his smile polite but distant. Good to see you, Rachel, he said. Moving closer to Naomi, Rachel's gaze flicked to Naomi, sizing her up like a rival, and Naomi met it with a cool, unyielding stare. The beach house buzzed with activity as the family settled in, staff members discreetly aware of Naomi's true identity, moving with practiced efficiency. Naomi caught the eye of Sophia, her trusted assistant, who offered a subtle nod from the sidelines. The staff's loyalty was a quiet strength, their silence a testament to Naomi's leadership. She'd built this empire from a single crumbling lot at 22, defying skeptics who said a young Latina woman couldn't conquer the luxury market. Every palm tree, every chandelier in this resort was her vision, yet Eleanor strutted through it as if she owned the place. Dinner that evening was a masterclass in Eleanor's power plays. The long teak table on the veranda overlooked the ocean, candles flickering against the twilight. Eleanor sat at the head, orchestrating the conversation like a conductor. Rachel was placed next to Daniel, a move so blatant that Naomi almost laughed. Rachel, tell Daniel about your latest project in Milan, Eleanor urged, her eyes gleaming. Rachel leaned in, her voice honeyed. It's a penthouse for a tech mogul. Marble floors, custom Murano glass. Daniel, you'd love the design software we used. Daniel nodded, his attention drifting to Naomi. Sounds impressive, he said, then turned to his wife. Naomi, you've got an eye for design too. What do you think of the villa's layout? Eleanor's fork paused midair, her lips thinning. Oh, Daniel, let's not bore Rachel with Naomi's opinions, she said, her tone dripping with dismissal. Vivian chimed in, her voice bright with malice. Yeah, Naomi is probably more into arranging bar napkins, right? The table went quiet, the air thick with tension. Daniel's hand clenched around his glass. That's enough, Vivian, he snapped. Naomi's got more taste than half the people here. Show some respect. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, but Naomi reached for Daniel's hand under the table, her touch calming him. It's fine, she murmured, though her mind was racing. Eleanor and Vivian weren't just mocking her. They were testing her. And Rachel was their weapon. As the meal progressed, Rachel's attempts to charm Daniel grew bolder. She laughed too loudly at his casual remarks, brushing his arm when passing the bread. Daniel, ever the gentleman, deflected her with short answers, his focus returning to Naomi. Naomi watched Rachel's frustration flicker, a tightening of her jaw, a flash of irritation in her eyes. Rachel wasn't used to being ignored, and Naomi knew that made her dangerous. Eleanor, meanwhile, kept the pressure on Naomi. Naomi, dear, could you check on the dessert? I'm sure you know your way around a kitchen, she said, her smile a thinly veiled command. Before Naomi could respond, Daniel stood. I'll handle it, Mom. Naomi is here to relax, not work. He strode toward the kitchen, leaving Eleanor visibly annoyed. Later, as the family scattered to the beach house's lounge, Naomi stood alone on the veranda, the ocean's murmur a soothing contrast to the evening's barbs. Daniel joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. I'm sorry about them, he said, his voice heavy. Mom and Vivian, they're out of line. Naomi leaned into him, her heart warmed by his steadfastness. I can handle them, Daniel. Always have. He kissed her forehead. I know, but you shouldn't have to. His words were a promise, but Naomi felt a prickle of unease. Eleanor's scheming, Vivian's venom, Rachel's ambition. This vacation was a chessboard, and Naomi was no pawn. She glanced at the beach house where Eleanor's laughter rang out, sharp and commanding. Rachel's silhouette moved closer to Daniel's chair, her intentions clear. Naomi's fingers brushed the master key card in her pocket, the one engraved with her name and title, Naomi Clark, CEO. She'd built this empire, this very house, and she'd be damned if she let Eleanor's games unravel her. Yet in the quiet before the battle, doubt flickered. Had she hidden too much for too long? Had her silence about her success made their disdain seem justified? She forced the thoughts down. Second-guessing was a luxury she couldn't afford. The week had just begun, and Naomi was ready to play. The Sapphire Cove resort glowed under the twilight, its crystal chandeliers casting prisms across the beach house's marble floors. The second evening of the Bennett family vacation was in full swing, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and the clink of wine glasses. Naomi Clark stood at the edge of the veranda, her silhouette framed against the indigo ocean, her simple linen dress a quiet rebellion against the ostentatious wealth around her. At 29, she was the unseen master of this paradise, the CEO of Sapphire Horizon Enterprises. Yet to her husband's family, she was a nobody, a bartender to be ordered about. She had built it all without a guiding hand. No family name, no safety net, only grit, sacrifice, and a relentless drive to carve her place in a world that had offered her none. The weight of their disdain pressed against her, but Naomi's resolve was iron, her eyes sharp as she watched the dynamics unfold inside. Eleanor Bennett held court, her pearl necklace glinting as she laughed too loudly at her own anecdotes. Her real estate empire, though modest compared to Naomi's, gave her a throne in this social circle, and she wielded it with precision. Vivian, her daughter, lounged nearby, her designer heels clicking as she flitted between guests, her smirks aimed at Naomi like well-timed darts. Rachel, Eleanor's hand-picked wild card, was a study in calculated charm, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, her emerald eyes fixed on Daniel, Naomi's husband. Naomi's fingers grazed the master key card in her pocket, a reminder of her power as she braced for another round of their games. The evening had started innocently enough. Naomi had slipped away to the resort's main restaurant to check on a VIP event, a routine she relished for its brief escape from Eleanor's barbs. She'd stood in the kitchen, nodding to her head chef as he presented a new dessert when her phone vibrated. A message from Sophia, her trusted assistant and eyes on the ground, flashed on the screen. Urgent. Check the security feed. Kitchen cam 3. Now. Naomi's pulse quickened. She excused herself, stepping into the restaurant's private office where a monitor awaited. With a few clicks, she pulled up the footage timestamped just minutes earlier. The screen showed the beach house's kitchen, empty save for Eleanor and Vivian. Eleanor, her back to the camera, held a small vial, its contents clear but ominous. "This will keep her out of the way," she murmured, pouring a few drops into a bowl of salad. Naomi's salad, marked with her name for dietary preferences. Vivian giggled, her voice low. "She'll be running to the bathroom all night, and Rachel can work her magic on Daniel." Eleanor's lips curled into a satisfied smile. It's time he saw what a real match looks like. The footage ended and Naomi's breath caught, her hand trembling as she gripped the desk. A laxative, perhaps, or something worse. She'd need tests to confirm, but the intent was clear. They weren't just mocking her. They were plotting to humiliate her, to clear the path for Rachel. Naomi's mind raced, her years of building an empire sharpening her instincts. She forwarded the footage to her security team with a single instruction. Prepare Protocol 9. Evidence packet. Standby. Protocol 9 was her failsafe, a meticulously designed response to serious guest violations. It involved gathering real-time evidence from cameras and witnesses, drafting legal notices for reservation cancellations, coordinating with trained security for discreet removal, and archiving data for potential litigation. Every employee from valets to managers was drilled in its execution, a testament to Naomi's foresight. She wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet, but the pieces were in place. Returning to the beach house, Naomi slipped back into the role of the unassuming daughter-in-law, her calm exterior masking the storm within. She rejoined Daniel on the veranda where he was chatting with his cousin, Derek. His face lit up at her approach, and he pulled her close. "Everything okay at the restaurant?" he asked, his voice warm. Naomi nodded, forcing a smile. "Just a quick check-in." She didn't tell him about the footage. Not yet. Daniel had always defended her, but she needed to see how far Eleanor's scheme would go. As the family moved to the poolside lounge for cocktails, Rachel seized her moment. She glided toward Daniel, a martini in hand, her caftan trailing like a siren's lure. "Daniel, you must try this cocktail," she said, her voice a velvet purr. "It's divine, almost as good as the ones I had in Paris last month." She leaned in, her hand brushing his arm, her eyes locked on his. Daniel stepped back, his expression polite but firm. "Thanks, Rachel, but I'm good with my bourbon." He turned to Naomi, slipping an arm around her waist. "Naomi makes a mean old-fashioned, though. Right, babe?" Naomi's lips twitched, her pride and Daniel's loyalty a flicker of light in the darkening night. Rachel's smile tightened, a crack in her polished facade. The rejection stung, and Rachel's composure began to fray. As the evening wore on, she lingered near Daniel, her laughter growing sharper, her touches bolder. During a group photo by the pool, she pressed herself against him, whispering something Naomi couldn't hear. Daniel's jaw clenched, and he gently but firmly moved away, rejoining Naomi. "She's persistent," he muttered, his tone laced with irritation. Naomi squeezed his hand. "Let her try," she said, her voice steady though her eyes tracked Rachel like a hawk. Eleanor's shadow loomed as she approached, her pearl earrings catching the poolside lantern's glow, her face a mask of disdain. She'd been watching Rachel's failed advance, her patience fraying like a worn thread. "Naomi," she snapped, her voice slicing through the party's hum, "stop hovering around Daniel like some desperate shadow." Naomi turned, her composure a fortress, but Eleanor pressed on, her words venomous. "You're not worthy of my son, and you never will be. A bartender. Please, Daniel deserves someone with class like Rachel." The crowd nearby froze, their whispers dying as all eyes turned to the confrontation. Daniel's face darkened, his voice a low growl. "Mom, that's enough. Naomi's my wife, and I chose her." He stepped between them, his body a shield, but Eleanor's sneer didn't waver. "You'll see I'm right," she hissed, glancing at Rachel, who smirked with renewed confidence. Naomi's hand tightened on Daniel's, her heart pounding, not from hurt, but from a fire igniting within. Eleanor's words were a gauntlet thrown, and Naomi was ready to pick it up. Rachel's frustration boiled over as the night deepened. Naomi and Daniel stood near the pool's edge, sharing a quiet moment, their laughter soft against the hum of the party. Rachel approached, her heels clicking with purpose. "Naomi, you must be tired from all your running around," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Why don't you take a break?" Before Naomi could respond, Rachel took a step closer, her shoulder angled as if to nudge Naomi toward the pool's edge. It was no accident. Her intent was clear, a petty act to embarrass Naomi with a public dunking, but Daniel was faster. His arms shot out to steady Naomi, pulling her back just as Rachel's momentum faltered. Rachel stumbled, her heel catching, and she barely caught herself, her face flushing with humiliation as guests turned to stare. Naomi's heart pounded, not from fear, but from clarity. Rachel's stunt, coupled with Eleanor and Vivian's scheme, was a declaration of war. She met Rachel's glare with a cool, unflinching stare, her voice low. "Careful, Rachel, the pool's deeper than it looks." Daniel's eyes narrowed, sensing the undercurrent. "What the hell was that about?" he asked, his protective instincts flaring. Naomi shook her head, not ready to reveal the full scope of the betrayal. "Just a clumsy moment," she said, but her mind was made up. As the party wound down, Naomi excused herself, slipping into the beach house's study. She replayed the security footage on her phone, the image of Eleanor's vials searing into her memory. Her fingers hovered over the screen, drafting a message to her security chief. "Protocol 9, full prep. Await my signal." The night was young, and Naomi Clark was no one's prey. Eleanor, Vivian, and Rachel had crossed a line, and she was ready to draw hers. The Sapphire Cove Resort pulsed with elegance as the third evening unfolded, its grand terrace bathed in the glow of 1,000 fairy lights strung above the ocean's edge. The Bennett family's lavish dinner was a spectacle, with crystal flutes clinking and the scent of truffle-infused dishes wafting through the air. Naomi Clark stood at the terrace's periphery, her simple navy dress a stark contrast to the opulence, her dark eyes scanning the scene like a general before battle. At 29, she was the architect of this empire, the CEO of Sapphire Horizon Enterprises, yet to her husband's family, she was a mere shadow, a bartender to be dismissed. Tonight, that illusion would shatter. Eleanor Bennett presided over the high table like a monarch, her pearl choker gleaming as she orchestrated the evening's rhythm. Her real estate firm, a modest but proud fixture in elite circles, fueled her arrogance, and she wielded it with surgical precision. Vivian, her daughter, sat to her right, her laughter sharp as she tossed barbed comments Naomi's way. Rachel, Eleanor's chosen pawn, was positioned beside Daniel, Naomi's husband, her emerald gown a calculated bid for attention. Naomi's fingers brushed the master keycard in her pocket. Its engraved title, Naomi Clark, CEO, a silent promise of the reckoning to come. The evening had begun with Eleanor's usual theatrics. As the first course was served, she raised her glass, her voice cutting through the chatter. "To family," she declared, her eyes sliding to Naomi with a smirk, "and to those who contribute in their own small ways." Vivian snickered, and Rachel's lips twitched, but Daniel's jaw tightened. "To Naomi," he countered, lifting his glass, "who makes every moment better." His defiance warmed Naomi's heart, but Eleanor's smile turned brittle, her grip on her flute whitening. Naomi had spent the day preparing, her mind a steel trap, after uncovering Eleanor and Vivian's plot to spike her salad with a laxative, caught on camera, and Rachel's failed attempt to push her into the pool. The security footage, now safely archived under Protocol 9, her emergency response system, was her ace. Protocol 9, evidence collection, legal drafting, security coordination, and data preservation, had been activated last night, with her team ready to execute her orders. She'd also finalized 2 acquisitions that morning, Eleanor's real estate firm and the interior design company owned by Rachel's mother. The contracts signed at dawn were her checkmate, but she'd waited for this moment to play them. As the main course arrived, Eleanor's campaign intensified. "Naomi, dear," she called, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "could you check why the dessert is delayed? You're so good at handling these things." The table fell silent, the insult hanging like a guillotine. Vivian leaned toward Rachel, whispering loud enough for all to hear. "She's probably used to fetching trays at that bar of hers." Rachel's laugh was a crystalline peal, but Daniel slammed his fork down, his voice low and dangerous. "Enough, Mom. Naomi is not your servant. And Vivian, keep your mouth shut." Eleanor's eyes flashed, but before she could retort, Naomi stood, her movement deliberate, commanding. She walked to the terrace's central podium where a microphone awaited, her steps echoing in the sudden hush. The crowd, family, guests, and discreet staff, turned to her, sensing a shift. Naomi's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the thrill of unveiling her truth. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear, resonant, cutting through the night like a blade. "I am Naomi Clark, owner and CEO of Sapphire Horizon Enterprises, including this Sapphire Cove Resort." A gasp rippled through the crowd, forks clattering. Eleanor's face drained of color, Vivian's mouth fell open, and Rachel's eyes widened, her glass trembling. Naomi's gaze locked on Eleanor, unflinching. "Some guests at Villa 3 have violated our policies," she continued, "including attempting to poison a fellow guest and engaging in aggressive behavior." She nodded to Sophia, who activated the terrace's massive screen. The security footage played. Eleanor and Vivian in the kitchen, pouring a vial into Naomi's salad, Vivian giggling, "She'll be out of the way." The crowd murmured, shock turning to outrage. The screen shifted to Rachel, her attempt to push Naomi into the pool, her stumble as Daniel pulled Naomi to safety. "These actions," Naomi said, "are unacceptable." Eleanor lurched to her feet, her voice shrill. "This is a mistake, a misunderstanding." Vivian stammered, "It was just a prank." Naomi's smile was ice. "A prank? I have lab results confirming the laxative and witnesses to Rachel's assault. Protocol 9, our violation response, has been activated." She paused, letting the weight settle. "Your reservation is canceled, effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Rachel's face flushed, her voice shaking. "You can't do this. My mother's company." Naomi cut her off, her tone lethal. "Your mother's company belongs to me as of this morning. You'll be reassigned to our Jakarta office, Rachel, or you're fired." She turned to Eleanor, whose hands trembled. "And your real estate firm, Eleanor. I acquired it at dawn. Your reign is over." The crowd buzzed, whispers erupting into a roar. Naomi raised a hand, silencing them. "You judged me by your prejudices, assuming I was beneath you. You were wrong." Daniel stood, his eyes red with guilt and pride. He crossed to Naomi, taking her hand. "Naomi, I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I should have stopped them sooner." Naomi squeezed his hand, her voice soft but firm. You defended me, Daniel. That's enough for now. She looked at him, seeing the weight of his mother's betrayal, but her focus returned to the task at hand. Security appeared, led by a stoic officer named James, their presence calm but unyielding. Eleanor's protests grew frantic. You can't throw us out, we're paying guests. Naomi's laugh was low, cutting. Paying me, Eleanor. Every cent you spent here lined my pockets. You never bothered to ask who I was. Vivian burst into tears, clutching Derek, who looked shell-shocked. Rachel, pale, tried to argue, but James stepped forward. Ma'am, please come with us, he said, his tone final, as security guided them toward the exit. Eleanor turned, her face a mask of fury. This isn't over, Naomi. Naomi met her gaze, unbowed. It is for you. The terrace erupted in applause, guests whispering about the bartender who'd turned out to be the queen. Naomi remained on the podium, her heart racing but steady, the ocean's roar a fitting backdrop to her triumph. Daniel stood beside her, his hands still in hers, his voice barely audible. I failed you, letting it get this far. Naomi shook her head, her eyes fierce. You stood by me, Daniel. We'll talk later, but this moment, it's mine. She turned to the crowd, raising her glass. To truth, she said, and the guests echoed her, their cheers a tidal wave. The Bennetts were gone, but Naomi's battle was far from over. She was ready for whatever came next. The Sapphire Cove Resort stood as a beacon of serenity 2 years after the night that changed everything. Its ivory sands kissed by a dawn that painted the sky in hues of coral and gold. Naomi Clark leaned against the railing of her penthouse balcony, her silk robe fluttering in the breeze, her eyes tracing the horizon where her empire, Sapphire Horizon Enterprises, thrived. At 31, she was no longer the silent titan hiding her power. She was a legend, a Latina woman who'd turned a single derelict lot into a chain of 12 luxury resorts and 8 Michelin-starred restaurants. The scars of her battle with her husband's family, Eleanor, Vivian, and Rachel, had faded, replaced by a quiet strength and a love that had weathered the storm. Yet the echoes of that fateful vacation lingered, a reminder of the cost of truth and the value of dignity. The fallout from the terrace showdown had been swift and merciless. Eleanor Bennett's real estate firm, acquired by Naomi in a dawn deal, crumbled within months as Naomi redirected its assets to her own ventures. Stripped of her empire, Eleanor's carefully curated image as a socialite matriarch unraveled. Her country club friends, once eager for her invitations, now whispered about her behind manicured hands, their gossip fueled by the viral security footage of her spiking Naomi salad. Vivian, her loyal accomplice, fared no better. Her tearful attempts at public apologies were drowned out by headlines exposing her role in the laxative scheme, and her socialite status dissolved into obscurity. Rachel, banished to her mother's company's Jakarta office after Naomi's acquisition, returned a year later, her once glamorous aura dimmed, her career a shadow of its former promise. Naomi had watched their downfall from her penthouse office, her focus not on revenge, but on rebuilding. The video of Eleanor's eviction, leaked by an anonymous staffer, had racked up millions of views, dubbed the Sapphire Cove scandal online. Social media erupted with memes of Eleanor's shrieking exit, her pearl necklace bouncing as security escorted her out. Naomi didn't gloat. She let the world draw its own conclusions. Her silence was her power, a lesson learned from years of navigating a world that underestimated her as a young Latina woman in luxury hospitality. Daniel, her husband, had been her rock, though guilt gnawed at him like a relentless tide. In the weeks after the confrontation, he'd paced their beachfront home, his brown eyes shadowed with remorse. I should have seen it, Naomi, he'd said one night, his voice raw. My mom, Vivian, they hurt you, and I didn't stop it soon enough. Naomi, sitting on their couch with a glass of Pinot Noir, had taken his hand, her gaze steady. Daniel, you stood by me. You called them out, pulled me from that pool. I don't care about Eleanor or Vivian. I choose us. Her words, firm yet tender, were a balm, and Daniel's shoulders eased, though his resolve to make amends burned brighter. Their marriage, tested by the Bennett family's betrayal, emerged stronger. Late-night talks on their balcony, the ocean's murmur as their backdrop, became their sanctuary. Daniel opened up about the pressure of Eleanor's expectations, his fear of losing Naomi to her pain. Naomi shared her own vulnerabilities, how Eleanor's jabs had stung, how she'd fought to keep her empire a secret to test their character. I wanted them to see me, not my money, she admitted. Daniel kissed her hand, his voice fierce. I always saw you, Naomi, always will. Their bond deepened, a partnership forged in truth, and Naomi felt a peace she hadn't known before. Together, they channeled their energy into something greater. 2 years ago, they'd founded the Sapphire Hope Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to education and entrepreneurship for underprivileged children. The idea had sparked during a quiet dinner, Daniel sketching logos on a napkin while Naomi outlined scholarships for hospitality students. The foundation's launch gala at Sapphire Cove had raised millions, its mission resonating with donors who admired Naomi's rise from nothing. Among the first recipients was Sophia's daughter, Elena, the child of Naomi's loyal assistant who had tipped her off about the security footage. Elena, now 18, was studying hotel management at Cornell on a full scholarship. Her tearful thank you speech at the gala a highlight that left Naomi's eyes misty. Sapphire Horizon Enterprises, too, had transformed. Naomi instituted policies prioritizing employee dignity, from dishwashers to executives. Her resorts became known not just for luxury, but for a culture where every worker was valued and their retention rates were the envy of the industry. Guests who mistreated staff faced swift bans, a zero-tolerance rule inspired by Eleanor's cruelty. Naomi's office, overlooking the ocean, held a new artifact, the salad plate from that fateful night, preserved in a glass case. It wasn't a trophy of vengeance, but a reminder of her resilience, a symbol that true power lay in rising above pettiness. The media couldn't get enough of Naomi. Business journals, once dismissive of her as a lucky entrepreneur, now hailed her strategic brilliance. A cover story in a leading magazine, titled The Queen of Sapphire, detailed her journey, quoting her philosophy: "Success isn't wealth, it's treating everyone with respect, no matter their title." Applications to work at her resorts tripled, and Naomi introduced a hiring policy. Any hint of elitism was grounds for rejection. Her empire wasn't just a business, it was a movement. Eleanor, Vivian, and Rachel remained distant specters. Naomi heard through mutual acquaintances that Eleanor had sold her mansion, retreating to a smaller home, her social circle fractured. Vivian, shunned by her former friends, had taken a job at a mid-tier retail chain, a far cry from her designer-clad past. Rachel, after a lackluster stint in Jakarta, tried to re-enter the elite scene but found doors closed. Her mother's company, now a subsidiary of Naomi's conglomerate, stood as a quiet reminder of the fall. Naomi felt no joy in their struggles, only a quiet satisfaction that justice had run its course. Daniel, her partner, found his own redemption in the foundation's work. He spearheaded coding workshops for teens, tying his tech expertise to their mission. One evening, as they reviewed grant proposals, he paused, his voice soft. "You've changed the game, Naomi. Not just for us, but for everyone." "You too," Naomi smiled, her hand resting on his. "We did this together, Daniel. That's what matters." The gala marking the foundation's second anniversary was a triumph, held on Sapphire Cove's Grand Terrace, the same stage where Naomi had toppled Eleanor's reign. Guests in black tie attire mingled under starlit skies, toasting to scholarships and startups. Naomi, in a sleek crimson gown, took the podium, her presence commanding. "Sapphire Hope is about second chances," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "It's about believing in people, no matter where they start." Daniel stood at her side, his pride palpable, and the applause was deafening. As the night wound down, Naomi stood alone by the ocean, the waves whispering secrets only she understood. She thought of Eleanor's car, spotted occasionally slowing at the resort's gates, her former mother-in-law staring at the sign bearing Naomi's name. Eleanor's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating Naomi's wealth, it was underestimating her worth. Naomi's fingers traced the plate in her office earlier that day, its silent lesson etched in her soul. Dignity was her crown, and no one could take it away. What a journey Naomi Clark has taken us on, from hidden power to triumphant truth. Her story reminds us that dignity and resilience outshine any prejudice. What did you think of Naomi's bold stand or Daniel's steadfast loyalty? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear how this tale resonated with you. A huge thank you for joining us on this unforgettable ride. Your support keeps these stories alive, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more epic sagas. Until next time, stay inspired, and we'll see you in the next.